I never thought my garden would be the backdrop for a love story, especially not mine. It was late April, and prom season had descended upon our high school like a glittery tornado. Everyone was caught up in the excitement, dress shopping, tux rentals, and of course, the all-important corsage and boutonniere coordination. I'd always been more comfortable among my flowers than at school dances, preferring the quiet company of perennials to the chaos of teenage social events. My garden was my sanctuary, a place I'd cultivated since I was 12, transforming our backyard into what my mom called a botanical miracle. Little did I know that my safe haven would soon become the stage for something I'd been both dreading and secretly hoping for. My best friend Ellie had been by my side since middle school. Where I was reserved and thoughtful, she was vibrant and spontaneous, pulling me out of my comfort zone just enough to experience life without completely overwhelming me. We balanced each other perfectly. And then there was her brother, Noah. 2 years older than us and infinitely cooler, Noah existed in that strange space between family friend and unreachable crush. I'd spent countless afternoons at their house, pretending I wasn't hyper-aware of his presence, of his laugh that seemed to resonate through walls, of the way he'd ruffle my hair and call me plant boy whenever he passed by. The whole thing started innocently enough. Ellie burst into my room one Tuesday afternoon, flopping dramatically onto my bed while I was trying to finish a biology assignment. "Liam," she announced, "we need your garden." Not a request, just a statement of fact, in typical Ellie fashion. When I asked why, she explained that Noah needed somewhere special to take photos with his prom date, Mackenzie. Apparently, Mackenzie's mom was insistent on having professional quality corsage photos, and Noah had mentioned my garden as the perfect backdrop. "He specifically asked for your garden," Ellie emphasized, a knowing smile playing at her lips. She'd guessed my feelings for Noah long before I'd admitted them to myself. "He said nothing would compliment Mackenzie's dress like your hydrangeas." I tried to ignore the little flutter in my chest at the thought that Noah had not only noticed my garden, but remembered it in enough detail to suggest it for something important. Let me explain why this request felt so monumental. My garden wasn't just a hobby, it was an extension of myself, something deeply personal that few people got to see. Noah wanting to use it meant he'd have to spend time there, with me, in the space where I felt most authentic. The thought was both thrilling and terrifying. What if he saw too much of the real me? What if the careful distance I'd maintained, the distance that kept our friendship comfortable and my heart relatively safe, collapsed under the weight of such intimate proximity? Despite my reservations, I couldn't say no. Not to Ellie, and certainly not to Noah. So I agreed, and the plan was set. The photo shoot would happen that Saturday, giving me just a few days to prepare both my garden and myself for what was to come. The days leading up to Saturday were a blur of garden maintenance and internal panic. I trimmed, weeded, and arranged everything to perfection, all while rehearsing casual conversations in my head. Ellie noticed my nervous energy and took every opportunity to tease me gently. "You know," she said while helping me string fairy lights around the pergola, "if I didn't know better, I'd think you were preparing for your own prom photos." I threw a gardening glove at her, which she dodged easily, laughing. "It's not like that," I insisted, though we both knew it was exactly like that. "I just want everything to look nice." "For Mackenzie," I added hastily. Ellie's expression softened. "Liam, you know I wouldn't have suggested this if I thought it would hurt you, right? Noah may be oblivious sometimes, but he's not cruel. He genuinely loves your garden." I nodded, appreciating her concern. "I know. And it's fine, really. It's just a photo shoot." But it wasn't just a photo shoot, and we both knew it. It was an exercise in restraint, in watching someone you care about prepare to celebrate a milestone with someone else. It was about maintaining that careful distance while simultaneously allowing someone into your most personal space. Saturday arrived with perfect weather, clear blue skies, gentle sunshine, and just enough breeze to make the flowers dance slightly. I'd been up since dawn, making final adjustments and trying to calm my nerves. My garden had never looked better. The spring blooms were at their peak, creating a tapestry of colors that would make any photographer swoon. The arbor was draped with climbing roses, the stone pathway lined with lavender and tulips, and the central seating area surrounded by my pride and joy, hydrangeas in every shade of blue and purple imaginable. Ellie arrived first, whistling appreciatively as she took in the scene. "Wow, you've outdone yourself, plant boy," she said, using Noah's nickname for me with a smirk. "This looks like something out of a magazine." I was about to respond when I heard another car pull up in the driveway. My heart immediately started racing. They were here? I smoothed down my shirt, A simple button-down that Ellie had insisted brought out my eyes and tried to look casual, as if I hadn't spent the last 3 days obsessing over this moment. Noah stepped into the garden first, and for a moment, everything else faded away. He was wearing dark jeans and a light blue shirt that matched the hydrangeas almost exactly. His dark hair was slightly tousled, as if he'd run his fingers through it on the drive over. He looked around, eyes widening as he took in the transformation. "Liam, this is incredible," he said, and the genuine on his voice made all my efforts worth it. "I knew your garden was special, but this is something else entirely." Before I could respond, Mackenzie appeared beside him. She was beautiful in a floral sundress, her blonde hair falling in perfect waves around her shoulders. I greeted her warmly, pushing aside the irrational twinge of jealousy. After all, she'd done nothing wrong except be the object of Noah's affection, something I couldn't fault her for when I understood it so completely. The photo shoot began with Mackenzie's mother directing poses and angles while Noah and Mackenzie stood beneath the rose arbor. I tried to make myself useful, adjusting flowers and suggesting spots with the best lighting, all while maintaining that necessary distance. Ellie, ever perceptive, kept finding excuses to involve me, insisting that as the garden's creator, I should be consulted on every shot. "Actually," Noah said during a brief pause, "Liam should be in some of these. He's the artist behind all this beauty." He gestured around at the garden, but his eyes stayed on me, causing my cheeks to warm. "Oh, no, I'm not dressed for photos," I protested, but Mackenzie was already nodding enthusiastically. "Yes, we need to document the mastermind," she agreed, and before I knew it, I was being pulled into frame beside Noah, his arm casually draped around my shoulders as if it belonged there. The photographer, Mackenzie's mother, captured several shots of the three of us, then suggested some of just Noah and me for the garden portfolio. I knew what she was doing. The knowing glance she exchanged with Ellie confirmed it. They were creating opportunities, moments of proximity that would otherwise never happen. In one such moment, as we stood by the hydrangeas waiting for Mackenzie to change into her actual prom dress for the Corsage photos, Noah turned to me. "You know," he said quietly, "I've always been a little jealous of your talent. The way you can create something so beautiful and lasting." I looked at him in surprise. "You? Jealous of me? That's unexpected." He shrugged, a small smile playing at his lips. "Is it? You have this gift, this passion that's so clearly part of who you are. Everyone else is still figuring out what they love, but you've known since forever. That's rare, Liam." The way he said my name, not Plant Boy, but Liam with such sincerity made something shift between us. The distance I'd so carefully maintained felt like it was closing, just slightly, like a door being opened just enough to let in a sliver of light. The moment was interrupted by Mackenzie's return, resplendent in her prom dress, a deep blue gown that complemented both Noah's tux and my hydrangeas perfectly. The Corsage photos began, with Noah carefully sliding the floral arrangement onto Mackenzie's wrist. I'd helped select the flowers for it earlier that week, another small connection to this moment that felt both sweet and painful. As the afternoon progressed, I found myself relaxing, even enjoying the process. Ellie was right. Noah wasn't cruel or oblivious. He made sure to include me in conversations, to acknowledge my contribution, to make me feel valued. And Mackenzie, far from being the obstacle I'd irrationally cast her as, was genuinely appreciative and kind. The photo shoot was winding down when Noah asked if he could take a few photos of just the garden on his own phone. For inspiration, he explained. "My dorm room next year could use some life." He was heading to college in the fall, another reality I'd been avoiding thinking about. While Mackenzie and her mother reviewed the professional photos, and Ellie conveniently found a reason to go inside, Noah and I walked through the garden together. He took photos occasionally, but mostly he just asked questions about why I'd chosen certain plants, how I designed the layout, what my favorite spot was. "This is it," I said, leading him to a small bench nestled under a weeping cherry tree. "It's perfect in the evenings. The way the light filters through the branches makes everything look magical." Noah sat down, patting the space beside him. "Show me," he said simply. So I sat, careful to maintain a few inches between us, and pointed out how the setting sun created patterns through the leaves, how the nearby pond reflected the light, how the whole garden seemed to glow in the golden hour. "I get it now," Noah said after a while. "Get what?" "Why you spend so much time out here. It's not just about the plants, is it? It's about creating a world that makes sense to you." I looked at him, startled by his insight. "Yeah, exactly. It's the one place where everything feels right." He nodded, then asked the question I'd been dreading. "So why aren't you going to prom?" Ellie said you refused to buy tickets, even though she offered to set you up with someone. I focused on a distant flower, avoiding his gaze. It's not really my scene. All those people, the expectations. I'd rather be here. Even though all your friends will be there? Even though it's a once-in-a-lifetime high school experience? I shrugged, trying to seem nonchalant. Even then, Noah was quiet for a moment, and when he spoke again, his voice had a different quality to it, hesitant, almost vulnerable. Is it because you don't have someone you want to go with? Or because the person you want to go with is already going with someone else? The question hung in the air between us, loaded with implications. I could feel my heart pounding, the careful distance I'd maintained threatening to collapse entirely. I could lie, brush it off with a joke, maintain the status quo. Or I could be brave, just this once. Maybe a bit of both, I admitted finally, still not meeting his eyes. Noah shifted slightly closer. Liam, look at me. Reluctantly, I turned to face him, prepared for pity or discomfort. Instead, I found a gentle understanding in his expression that caught me off guard. I've known about your feelings for a while, he said quietly. Ellie didn't tell me, he added quickly, seeing my panic. I figured it out on my own. You're not as subtle as you think. I felt my face burning with embarrassment. I'm sorry. I never meant to make things weird or... You didn't, he interrupted. Actually, it's made me think a lot about things. About myself. About what I want. He ran a hand through his hair, a nervous gesture I'd seen countless times. Mackenzie and I are just friends, you know. We're going to prom as friends because her girlfriend goes to another school and couldn't get a ticket to ours. I was going to tell you earlier, but then you seemed so determined to keep your distance. The information took a moment to process. She has a girlfriend? But then why all this? I gestured vaguely to indicate the elaborate photo shoot. Noah smiled. Her mom is a photographer who needed portfolio pieces, and Mackenzie wanted nice photos to show her girlfriend. The corsage is real, though. I'm still her prom date, just not in the way you thought. The revelation left me speechless. All this time, all this anxiety, all this careful distance, and the obstacle I perceived wasn't even real. So, Noah continued, filling the silence. I was thinking, prom is next weekend. Tickets are still available. And I happen to know that my sister has already coordinated with your mom to buy you a suit, just in case you changed your mind. I laughed despite myself. Of course she has. Ellie never could resist meddling. Is it meddling if it works out? Noah asked, his eyes holding mine. Because I'd really like you to be there, Liam. Not just at prom, but around. In my life. More than you already are. The distance between us, physical and emotional, had never felt so small. Years of careful restraint were crumbling, replaced by a tentative hope that felt both terrifying and exhilarating. I'd like that too, I admitted. But what about college? You're leaving in a few months. State University is only 2 hours away, he pointed out. And they have an excellent horticulture program, which I happen to know you're interested in for when you graduate next year. His smile turned slightly mischievous. I may have done some research. The realization that he'd been thinking about our future, that he considered how we might fit into each other's lives beyond high school, was overwhelming. This wasn't just about a crush or a moment. This was about possibilities I hadn't allowed myself to imagine. Our conversation was interrupted by Ellie's return, her timing suspiciously perfect as always. She took one look at our faces and broke into a wide grin. Finally, do you know how exhausting it's been watching you two dance around each other? It's like the world's slowest rom-com. Noah laughed, standing up and offering me his hand. We should probably get back to the others before they send a search party. I took his hand, letting him pull me to my feet, noticing how he didn't let go immediately. The garden around us, my carefully cultivated sanctuary, suddenly felt different. Not just mine anymore, but a shared space, a backdrop to something new beginning. The week leading up to prom passed in a blur of nervous excitement. Ellie, true to Noah's word, had indeed conspired with my mother to purchase a suit that matched Noah's tux perfectly. The prom committee, learning of my last-minute decision to attend, graciously found me a ticket. And Noah, now free from the pretense of distance, spent every possible moment with me, often in the garden where we'd finally bridged the gap between friendship and something more. Prom night itself was both exactly what I'd feared and nothing like I'd expected. The crowds were overwhelming at times, the music too loud, the tradition slightly cheesy. But with Noah beside me, his hand a steady presence at the small of my back, it all became manageable. Even beautiful, in its own way. We danced, awkwardly at first, then with growing confidence as the night progressed. During a slow song, as we swayed together in the dimmed lights, Noah leaned close to whisper in my ear. "Thank you for being brave," he said. "For letting me into your garden, into your life." I smiled, tightening my arms around his neck. "Thank you for choosing my garden for your photos. And for choosing me, distance and all." Later that night, after the dance had ended and we joined friends for the traditional post-prom breakfast at the local diner, Noah drove me home. We sat in his car for a while, talking about everything and nothing, reluctant to end the evening. "Come on," I said finally, opening my door. "I want to show you something." I led him through the side gate into the garden, now lit only by the fairy lights we'd strung up for the photo shoot and the full moon overhead. It was different at night, more intimate, more magical. We made our way to my favorite bench under the cherry tree, now showering its petals like gentle snow in the spring breeze. "This is how I always imagined it," I admitted, looking around at the garden that had witnessed so much of my life. "Sharing this place with someone who matters. Someone who sees it the way I do." Noah's hand found mine in the semi-darkness. "It's even more beautiful at night," he said softly. "Like you created your own little universe out here." "Our universe now," I corrected, feeling bold. "If you want it to be." His answer wasn't in words, but in the way he turned toward me, his free hand gently cupping my cheek as he leaned in. Our first kiss was tentative, a question being asked and answered in the same breath. The second was more certain, a promise taking root between us. When we finally pulled apart, Noah rested his forehead against mine. "You know," he said with a smile I could hear in his voice, "I'm really glad Mackenzie needed those Corsage photos." I laughed softly. "Me too. Though I think we both know that was just an excuse. Your sister is not as subtle as she thinks she is." "True. But her heart was in the right place." He paused, then added more seriously, "Just like mine is. Right here, with you." As we sat together under the cherry blossoms, surrounded by the garden that had once been my solitary refuge and was now the beginning of our story, I realized that sometimes the distance we create to protect ourselves is the very thing that keeps us from what we need most. Sometimes, letting someone into your carefully tended world isn't a risk. It's the most beautiful growth of all. In the years that followed, my garden would witness many more moments between us, study sessions when I joined Noah at State University, holiday gatherings with both our families, quiet evenings planning our future. But I would always remember that spring night when the distance finally closed, when the careful boundaries I'd maintained gave way to something far more wonderful than I could have cultivated alone. And it all began with a Corsage photo, a garden in bloom, and the courage to finally close the distance I'd been hiding behind all along. Total_char_count, 18,863.